Morning, how are you?
Science and wildlife presenter Liz Bonnin was born in France.
Thanks a million.
She spent much of her childhood in Ireland, but her family are from the Caribbean.
Morning. How's it all going?
When people ask me what I am ethnically, I just say I'm a mongrel. You know those forms you have to fill out for visas or whatever? There actually isn't a box for me. My mom is from Trinidad, and she is an Indian-Portuguese mix. On the other side of my family, on my dad's family, I know that he is French Martinican and maybe other things that I don't know. I'm a big mishmash of different cultures.
Can you hear me?
And that's bound to reveal some unknowns into the lives of these zebra.
But Socks, the 4-year-old female that Max spotted in the forest, is pushing ahead of Winnie, Janet, and the rest.
Super.
I hope there's nothing too hideous. I do wonder about slave ownership and whether that was part of my family's history. It's something in the back of my head. I kind of think that it's probably quite likely, yeah. I want to find out when each arm sort of arrived in the Caribbean and why and what the story is.
Okay, let's go from 3102 and lose Northern.
I want to know everything. Everything.
Liz is beginning her journey in Trinidad.
So I was born in Paris and I grew up in the south of France until I was 10, but my mum is from Trinidad.
Trinidad is one of the most ethnically diverse islands in the Caribbean. Liz wants to track down the roots of her maternal grandfather's family, who she knows originally came from India.
I film in India a lot and I feel a connection to India. So I'd love to know when my Indian family came to Trinidad, which ancestors moved over, from where in India, what caste they were. So I'm on my way to meet my cousin Andrew. He's like a brother to me. I spent so many holidays here in Trinidad. I virtually grew up with him.
Liz's cousin has arranged to meet her at an art supplies shop in the Trinidadian capital, Port of Spain. This business was once owned by Liz's family.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm really good.
Good to see you. You okay?
I'm really good, how are you?
It's been a while.
I know.
Yeah.
Liz never knew her mother's father, her grandfather, but she did know his sisters, her great aunts.
Right, so we'll do these one at a time. Now, who do you know here?
Okay, so that's Oris.
Yes, it
That's
is.
Sybil. And that's Everil.
Yeah.
Look at them.
And sort of where they are.
Well, they're in the art shop, I guess.
The original place.
Oh my God, this is taking me back, you know. And 1956. But do we know when? Who set up the company? Like, when did it start?
Auntie Sybil took the business over from May Agnes, her mother, our great grandmother. So
May Agnes.
yes.
Is that her?
Yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh. So that's great grandfather?
George, yes.
George.
George was his name.
Handsome. I can see Mum in May's face.
Very much.
So who's this?
That is Auntie Sybil.
Look at her.
Yes.
So this is May. This is George. This is the first time I've seen a picture of my great grandfather.
Right.
What else do you
So
have?
the next one I've got is an odd one.
Well, there's George.
It is. So I'm not sure
Surrounded
what.
by clerics, as in people of the church.
That's a good point. Yes.
They're well dressed.
Very colonial. Very
Very colonial. all looks like they're from the Caribbean with Indian or African heritage. When the Indians first came to Trinidad to work the farms, they probably didn't have two pennies to rub together.
Probably not.
So all of these did pretty well for themselves.
Yeah. I've managed to find one sort of document that's actually really interesting, and it's Auntie Sybil's obituary.
Sybil Gwendolyn Rawle died peacefully last October in the Mary Jenny Poole home after a lingering illness at the age of 89.
There you go.
She was one of the leaders who assisted in establishing the Susamacha Church, where she served with great distinction. Hang on. She was one of the leaders who assisted in establishing the Susamacha Church. She set up... Sybil Rawle set up a church where she served with great distinction, eventually being elevated to the status of an ordained elder. Stop it. Did you know this?
Not until I read that.
When did this all happen, and how did we not know about this? What is the Susamacha Church? What kind of order is it?
Presbyterian, which is then odd because your mum and my mum were then brought up very Catholic. So
Indeed.
the other odd thing is the church was in San Fernando, in the south of Trinidad, rather than in Port of Spain.
South Trinidad. I don't think I've ever been to South Trinidad. I think it makes sense to me to go to San Fernando and find out more about where George and May came from.
Indians came to Trinidad to work on the sugar plantations after the abolition of slavery. Almost 150,000 made the journey between 1845 and 1917. Today, their descendants are the largest ethnic group in Trinidad. Liz wants to know more about her Indian great-grandparents, George Albert and May Agnes Rawle. The only clues she has are the obituary of her great-aunt Sybil, revealing she was a Presbyterian from the south of Trinidad, and an intriguing photograph.
I'm fascinated by this picture of my great-grandfather, George Albert. And I can't really make head or tail of it because, I don't know, I think I would have presumed that my Indian family would have been Hindus. So I'm on my way to meet the archivist of the Presbyterian Church in San Fernando. I'm going to show him this picture and hopefully he can shed some light. Good morning. Reverend Kalu?
Hello.
Hello, I'm Liz.
Liz.
Very nice to meet you.
Welcome to Paradise Hill, San Fernando. This is where we are going.
Fantastic.
Come this way.
This is really what I wanted to ask you about because I can't really make sense of this photograph.
This is a gathering of Presbyterian men. As you see, there are two clergymen at least.
So what does this mean about George Albert? What was he?
He was certainly a member of the Presbyterian Church. Here is certificate of marriage of
May Agnes Seardew and George Albert Rawle.
Performed at the Susamacha Presbyterian Church.
Got married in 1907 on the 10th of January. That's the first time I've seen what her maiden name is.
Maiden name.
Do we know anything about Seardews?
Her father would be a gentleman by the name of Timothy Seardew. Kenneth J. Grant, who performed the wedding, he wrote this book.
About my missionary memories.
Yeah, you see?
Wow.
And he mentions Timothy Seardew. There he is. Timothy Seardew, secretary of the board of managers. So he was a prominent person in the church. He was an elder.
So how does a man of Indian heritage become a Presbyterian? What happened to my great-great-grandfather or his family that led him to go down the Presbyterian path?
The first thing that we'd have to note is the educational opportunity. And because of having an education, of course, upward social mobility, you're climbing the social ladder. Westernization went with Christianization. Simply being associated with white missionaries made a great deal of difference. He's also here. Timothy Sergiu, court interpreter.
What's a court interpreter?
He was assigned to the courts of the land where there were cases being tried, especially when Indians are involved.
Okay.
And he was the Hindustani English expert.
So he'd already learnt English. He was then hired. He was given a good job.
Yeah.
Interesting. Weirdly, I feel a little bit torn about what I found out. I feel a bit sad, and I think it's because it's that loss of the Hindu culture, a loss of all the traditions and the religious beliefs and culture that I love when I go to India. And when I see pictures of my Indian family all dressed up in this constrictive British garb in the West Indies, I just feel a little bit sad that all of that was lost.
Liz has discovered that her great-great-grandfather, Timothy Sergiu, was a pillar of the local community. She's visiting the Susamacha church where he worshipped to meet local historian Angelo Bisesasinghe.
So, Angelo, I found out about my great-great-grandfather, Timothy Sergiu. He had quite an important role in the Presbyterian Church, but he was also quite an influential person outside of the church.
Well, we could start with some documentation, Liz. Here we have his obituary.
Okay. I find it hard to read ancestors' obituaries, and that's quite surprising. I'm just getting emotional just thinking about a man I never met.
You're connected to it.
Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Timothy Sergiu of San Fernando died at his residence at La Pique on Wednesday evening, the 17th, after a fortnight's illness. He succumbed to typhoid. The deceased leaves an aged mother, widow, and 12 children. Head of the mercantile house known as the Star. Now, the mercantile house, what is a mercantile house?
Well, San Fernando was a market town, so its high street was lined on both sides with shops. The Star was one of those establishments, and here, this building was the Star.
This is my great-great-grandfather's store.
He was a very wealthy man indeed. This is a probate of his will.
Real estate, cocoa and sugar plantation known as Nelson.
Indeed.
130 quarries?
Quarries. So you're looking at an approximate of over 400 acres of land. A man who owns 400 acres in a small island like ours was a man of significant and very, very extensive consequence in society.
There is still that thing in my head, and I don't know why it still lingers, of who are you as a person, and how much do you value your heritage, your culture, your religion, everything about Hinduism.
You'd have to understand, colonial British society in the West Indies was heavily stratified along lines of color, race, religion, right? So to break the chains of any of those class structures, it would have been almost mandatory to convert to Christianity some way, somehow. You don't live for yourself, you live for your children, you live for the future in the hope that they have a better life than you.
I'm beginning to understand what kind of man Timothy Sergiu was.
He must have been a pretty tough man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liz wants to find out if Timothy Sergiu was born in Trinidad or if he was the ancestor who came over from India. She's meeting up again with her cousin Andrew. He's been doing more digging and has some information from cousins in Canada.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. Is it going well?
It's going really well.
Well, I've got something here that's arrived from Canada, but maybe it'll make a bit more sense to you. So let's do this one at a time. One at a time. These are very old.
Okay. Can I look at the back?
Yeah?
Oh my gosh.
Have a look.
Timothy Sergiu, with his 2 brothers beside him and staff of his store at High Street, now Imperial Stores, San Fernando. So Timothy Sergiu is May Agnes's father.
All right.
And he had a general store on High Street, San Fernando. He was a very wealthy, very successful man.
Right.
I can't believe I'm seeing what he looks like. Look at him. They're very handsome men, the 3 brothers, aren't they? Look at him.
And second one, I guess, just helps a bit more with placing people.
That's
But
the mother.
goes even further, yes. Yeah.
And she's in a sari.
Yeah.
Wow, 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 wow. Okay, so Gio Adar, perhaps George Adar, another son Samuel Bunsi, another son Jas Mungal. So Sergiu is not necessarily the surname as we'd imagine it. With Indian names, I'm not sure quite how it works. What was her name, I wonder? Look at her. So that's our great grandmother.
Yes, that'd be right.
Look at her. She's incredible looking.
Yes.
Even though I learned so much about Timothy Sergiu's life as an adult, we still know nothing about him as a child, whether he was born in Trinidad or whether he did come on the ships. It's hard to know whether this was all sort of acquired prosperity or whether they already had some wealth. Shamshu?
Yes.
Hi, Liz Bonnin.
Nice to meet you.
Liz is meeting expert genealogist Shamshu Dean.
Welcome to the National Archives.
Thank you for having me here. Shamshu, I wanted to show you this photograph of my great-great-grandfather, Timothy Sergiu, his brothers, and their mother. And I was wondering, basically, if you had as much information about this family as possible, I would be eternally grateful.
Yes, well, it's quite an interesting photograph. I have here his death certificate.
Okay. Timothy Sergiu, age 42, Hindustani interpreter, country of birth, India. I'm going to cry. Oh, dearie me. What am I like? That Peak Road, cause of death, typhoid. Oh, I don't know why I got all emotional there. I presume because of the dates and everything, and with the immigration of Indians to Trinidad, that he potentially was one of those individuals that came on the boats. But it's really lovely to know for sure that, you know, I mean, I knew I had Indian roots, but it's so real now.
And the fact that we have the names of brothers,
Yes.
That's interesting, because when people came to Trinidad from wherever they came, many of them had one name only. And that name eventually could have become a surname.
So that could have been his first name.
His first and sometimes only name.
Because I was wondering how his brothers all had different surnames. So to find out which ship he was on, what year he came, it helps to know that he was in a family group with Bunsi, Mungal, Adar, and the mother whose name we don't know.
So we will look through a document which might assist us in this way. But before we do that, we need to put the gloves on.
Okay.
Because we are looking at original documents.
So excited right now. I've got butterflies in my stomach.
Okay, I have here one of the sections of a ship register, and each page then would represent a person who comes from India. This here is the register, a part of the register of the Indus ship that came to Trinidad in 1872. So I want you to take a look at this page and see if you have any questions about it.
Well, the
Do you
writing is
see-
so beautiful.
Well, first of all, I want you to concentrate on
Sorry.
the name of the person. Can you read that name for us? You are
Surjodin.
Yeah. So
Sir
you see-
Judin.
So you see a bit of a name similar to Sergiu.
Yes.
Okay. So bearing that in mind, we would like to see if any others from that picture might have been here. Okay. So we know that there's a Mangal there. So we will change here.
Mongol.
And we
Okay.
also know that this one here, Udhar.
Adar.
Yes. Did you see this one?
No, this is Bunsi. Bunsee, as opposed to Bunsie. Bunsi.
And
So that's the four brothers.
Yes, we can see that. And we also wanted to take a look here at the age of Sergio. So we go to Sergio, and we see his age here is what?
8.
8. And when we look at his death certificate, what are we seeing? We're seeing that he dies in 1906 at age
42, so
42.
it adds up. It adds up.
So when we take
this is
away-
him. So when you use all the different bits of information, you can confirm.
Yes,
What about the mum?
this is the mom.
I can't read that beautiful
Her name is Sudani.
Sudani.
Yeah.
Sudhanee. Sudani.
Yes.
30 years of age.
Yeah.
My great, great, great grandmother.
And do you know that the father had also come?
I can't. Hang on.
The husband is here.
Onundi.
Anandi.
Onundi.
Yeah.
Liz now has the names of her Indian great-great-great-grandparents, Anandi and Sudani. She wants to know where they were in India's caste system.
What is the caste? I
The
can't.
caste is called Koiri. It's right here.
Koiri.
Yeah. This is an agricultural caste. They were involved in agriculture. It was not a very high caste.
That tells me so much more again about what he achieved in his life. If he came from an agricultural background, a low caste. What does Zilla mean?
Zilla is a district from, in this case, it's in Uttar Pradesh. They don't put Uttar Pradesh, but we know this today.
Uttar
But
Pradesh is
it's a state in northern India. It's a
northern
larger
India.
state, but we even have it up to the
village.
village level.
Oh, good grief.
Lachmanpur.
Lachmanpur. So
Yes,
they
yeah.
came from the village of Lachmanpur.
Yes,
I now finally know where my Indian heritage comes from. Lachmanpur
Yeah.
in Uttar Pradesh.
Yes.
Indians coming to Trinidad faced a grueling 3-month voyage around the Cape of Good Hope. Their passage was paid for them. In return, once they got to Trinidad, they were bound to work for a plantation owner for a period of 5 years, a system that was known as indentureship.
So each of these pages, which were on the ship record, is a contract,
Yes.
the indentureship contract?
Yes.
Certified that I have examined and passed the above named as a fit subject for emigration, and that he is free from all bodily and mental disease, having been vaccinated. It sounds a bit close to the slavery aspect, doesn't it? It's like this individual's fit.
Yeah.
We've checked him out, we've checked his teeth. Do we have any idea of what happened to them the minute they got off that boat in 1872?
Yes. They were assigned to various plantations or estates. That estate was called, it's right at the top up here.
Palmist?
Palmist, correct. Right.
Palmist, where is Palmist? Does it still exist?
It doesn't exist as an estate anymore, but it is in South Trinidad. It was in South Trinidad, not too far from San Fernando.
It's really, really hard to put into words how I'm feeling right now. I can't help but think about Sudani and Anundi, my great-great-great-grandparents. And Sudani certainly has a name and a face now, with this really young family. My great-great-grandfather, just 8 years old, an 8-year-old boy, leaving his home. I want to know how on earth this petrified little fella dragged to this plantation to work, how he went from that to this successful, confident family man who owned estates and a shop and a plantation. I'd love to understand more about how he made himself such a success in the face of so many obstacles, so many challenges.
Today, Trinidad's sugar industry has almost closed down. Liz is meeting historian Radhika Mahes at an old, disused sugar mill.
I wanted to know what life was like for my family as they got off the ship and were assigned their estate and went to work. What was it like?
Normally the contract stated that they had to work from 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening, but during crop time, when they were reaping, when they were harvesting the cane, they would probably work till 9, 10 in the night. So they were extremely long days for the laborers.
And how much different was it to the conditions that the slaves had worked in?
It was a system of paid labor as opposed to African enslavement. There was the option to return to India, whereas with slavery, you didn't have an option to return to Africa at any point.
Yeah.
But the mere fact that the indented laborers lived on the same barracks that the enslaved Africans lived in before says something. So it would have been the same plantations, the same living conditions.
And so I'm thinking about my great-great-grandfather, 8 years of age. What would life have been like for him?
Children were allowed to work on the estates.
Even at 8 years old?
Even at 8 years old, they would be given lighter tasks and they'd be given smaller wages. But there were some estates where the planters were actually opposed to the children working, and they preferred to encourage the parents to send the children to school.
So he may have worked, he may have been sent to school.
Yeah.
To explain more about the Palmiste estate, where Timothy Sergiu's family went, Radika's taking Liz to a nearby plantation house, which has been turned into a museum.
The Palmiste estate was one of the more liberal estates in Trinidad, one of the better estates to be an indented laborer.
Really?
Yeah, it was owned by the Lamont family, and they were Scottish Presbyterians. So the children on the Palmiste estate, the children of the indented laborers, they would have probably been encouraged to attend schools.
So in a sense, you know, I've got the Lamont family to thank because they could have been sent to a less liberal plantation. And do we have information about my family at this plantation?
We have a birth certificate of Timothy Sergiu's eldest son.
Oh.
And this birth certificate clearly shows that Timothy Sergiu was a schoolmaster.
So this is 1882. What? Oh, so at 18 years of age?
Yes.
He would have been already a schoolmaster.
So
This
most
guy.
probably he would have been allowed to attend school as a little boy in the plantation, maybe as soon as he arrived in Trinidad or right after. So if Timothy Sergiu had probably stayed in India, he would probably not have been able to have any kind of upward caste mobility because there were such severe caste restrictions in India.
So as my heart was breaking for these poor indentured laborers, and I mean, that's not to say that their life wasn't difficult, Timothy got opportunities that, you know, arguably he would never have gotten in India. It's amazing. When I think about Timothy Sergiu first setting eyes on Trinidad, at the age of 8, you know, I can't help but want to give that little boy a hug. It must have been so difficult. I still feel a little bit sad that he had to lose some of his identity, his culture, his homeland. But that's probably really unfair of me. I wasn't born in a lower caste in India with very little options to better myself. So it's a great feeling to think that despite where he came from, he made so much of himself. I am incredibly proud to think that he is my ancestor.
Liz now wants to explore the other side of her family, her father's. It means island hopping. Liz's father was born in the nearby Caribbean island of Martinique, which used to be a French colony. Martinique's history, like Trinidad's, is dominated by sugar and slavery.
I used to come to Martinique every holiday. I remember coming for Christmas, for Easter, for summer, to visit this amazing woman. This is my dad's mum. We all called her Granny. Her name is Julie. She kind of brought us up in a way because we spent so much time here. She passed away 13 years ago, and I'm tearing up just thinking about her because I loved her so much. I was so close to her. And this is my first time back in Martinique since she passed away. So everywhere is just bringing back incredible memories, and it's a bittersweet visit for sure.
Liz is meeting up with her aunt, Marie-Christine, who is also her godmother.
Marie-Christine, darling Lizzie.
Oh mon Dieu, ça me fait tellement plaisir de te voir.
How have you been? I'm great.
Ça va bien?
Ça va très bien. Et toi?
Oh, ça va bien. Je suis si contente de
It's so
te
good
voir.
to see you.
It's been too long.
Thank you so much for meeting me.
They've come to Granny Julie's old house, which she moved out of more than 30 years ago. It no longer belongs to the family, but the owners have allowed them to take a look around.
Oh, look at that.
Oh my God.
Terrace.
Oh la 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 la. Okay, the terrace is the same tiles, my
Yeah,
Christine.
same tiles and same dining room.
Do you know what memory I have coming through those doors? Myself, my sister, and my cousin,
Yeah,
Karine.
Karine.
It's raining tropical rain, and we all run out here and we wash our hair in the rain. I love that it's the same doors and the same floors. Let's go out on the terrace. Same doors that Granny used to shut during the storms, and at night we'd all help shut everything up. It's funny, it seems so much smaller now.
Maybe you've seen this photograph.
Marie-Christine, I love it. Look at the
Look
state
at
of
the
me.
baby.
Could I be any chubbier?
Yeah.
So this is when you were
Well,
named
this
my
was-
godmother
Absolutely.
at my christening.
It was a special day.
Look at you.
Look at that.
I
So
remember
you-
this photograph. The year we visited Granny just before her death, we did start looking at some of the old cupboards where she had photographs, and I remember seeing
And
this.
you saw this one.
And this is Granny in the middle.
Yes. So they're all in mourning. You see, they all wear black and the baby wears white.
Okay.
Their mother just died.
Good grief. So Granny's mom died when she was only
She was
one or
a baby.
two.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that she lost her mum so young.
Yes,
Their father was
very-
still alive?
No, the father died a few months before.
Wow, Marie-Christine, I didn't know that.
Yeah. This is him. Everybody called him Achille, which was his second name.
Granny's father. Achille Gros des Ormeaux. Oui, Gros des Ormeaux. Gros des Ormeaux is a strange name. What do we know about the Gros des Ormeaux? What did your mum tell you?
It's a huge family.
Yeah?
She wouldn't tell me much. It's such a mix, and it's so complicated.
Is it?
Yes.
I was wondering, in fact, I was presuming that if we were French, at some point we owned slaves. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I think they owned a plantation, or several plantations. I don't know with certainty, but I was told, my mother told me that at some point there were slaves on the plantations. And when slavery was abolished, a few of them stayed with the family. They wouldn't leave.
Okay.
They felt at home.
I hope so. I hope that, aside from the fact that now we recognize that as a hideous period in our history, that perhaps our family at least treated them well to make them want to stay, or perhaps they had nowhere else to go, didn't know what else to do, and they stayed anyway. But yeah, I want to find out more about that. So I'm heading south to meet up with a researcher who's been digging into my grandmother's family tree to my absolutely favorite beach in the whole of Martinique. It's a place I used to go to with Granny all the time. Romain,
C'est moi. moi.
Very nice to meet you. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Ça va?
Ça va et toi?
Ah oui, très
Très
bien.
bien.
I wanted to show you this. This is Achille Gros des Ormeaux. He's my great-grandfather. He's my grandmother Julie's father.
Yes.
And I would love to know whether the stories of my family owning slaves is true.
Okay. In Martinique, slavery was abolished in 1848. So if at some point your family was involved in slavery, it was before that. I can show you a document I have here with me.
Mariage.
Yes.
So, oh my gosh, so a marriage between Achille and Charlotte. Charlotte Savane.
Charlotte Savane.
So 1907, the 29th of August at 9 in the morning. So Achille was born on the 5th of October, 1883, legitimate son
Yes.
of Louis-Marie Gros des Ormeaux. Okay, so his father was 79 years old, propriétaire,
So he was a landowner.
a landowner,
Yes.
79 in 1907. Then he would be born in 1828.
Exactly. So that would mean that at the time of the abolition of slavery, he was
1848,
20 years
20
old.
years old.
So it is very unlikely he was himself a slave owner. So in order to get to the next generation, I brought another document for you.
So this is my great-great-grandfather's death certificate. Louis-Marie,
Yes, it is.
in 1911, aged 83, landowner, the legitimate son, so here we go, of François-Alexandre Gros des Ormeaux.
Okay, so we got your great-great-great-grandfather.
Great already. Good Lord. I mean, I wanted to go as far back as possible, but this is amazing.
So what we know from François-Alexandre Gros des Ormeaux is that he was a well-known landowner in the southeast of the island of Martinique at that time. And I found something for you. I found out that one of his property is still standing. Would you like to see it? Well, let's go.
Wow. Seriously?
Yes, seriously.
Wow. Yes, let's go.
Let's go.
Liz has traced her family back to her great-great-great-grandfather, François-Alexandre Gros des Ormeaux, who was a landowner in Martinique during the era of slavery.
Ooh, that is a view and a half. Just
Amazing.
incredible. And so François Alexandre owned the land?
Yes, he
And
did.
this was sort of the main plantation house?
Yes, it was. You can see on top of the hill, so you could see all the land around.
So François Alexandre was a plantation owner.
Yes, he was.
Did he own slaves?
Well, and I have a document here I would like to show you. It's an inventory that was drawn up in 1838 of his possession.
Okay. Monsieur François Alexandre Gros des Ormeaux, age 43. So my great-great-great-grandfather was born in the 18th century. Okay, so a portion of land, 6.75 hectares. Okay, so it states, I mean, that's incredible, from 1838. So it states who he is and the land that he, yeah, I just, Actually, can you just stop filming?
The 1838 inventory contains a list of slaves owned by Liz's great-great-great-grandfather.
Sorry about that, Romain. I got a shock. It's something I expected. And it's when I saw people's names and the price. These are people, these are human beings who were treated as commodities, and we know this. But I just got a shock just seeing it on paper. So François Alexandre, for this plantation, owned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 slaves. So yeah, there's Louison,
Âgé de 47 ans.
47 years old, an estimated price, 1,111 francs. Bernardine, la fille, so the daughter of Louison, 18 years old, 1,200 francs. Louise, also the daughter, 13 years old, 900 francs. I have to take a minute after everyone. I can't read anymore.
Okay.
It's really strange. I was pretty sure there was slave ownership in my family. I mean, the whole of Martinique involved slave ownership, you know, with the sugarcane industry and many of the other islands and much of America. I mean, it's something I was thinking of before I even left the UK, and I thought I was more or less prepared for it. And my reaction shocked me. Now I look around and I think this was a place that was filled with slaves working the sugarcane fields. It's a lot to take in, even though I was preparing myself. The reality of it in my family, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing, yeah.
Martinique's economy depended on slavery. In the 1830s, there were more than 70,000 slaves in the colony, ruled over by about 10,000 whites. Liz is heading to Martinique's archives, where records from the era of slavery are held.
Dominique?
Lise, bonjour. Ravie de faire votre connaissance.
Enchantée, comment allez-vous?
Très bien, je vous remercie.
Allons-y.
On y va.
She's meeting historian Dominique Roger, an expert on the period.
So Dominique, yesterday for me was a very hard day. It was quite overwhelming. And I found proof that my great-great-great-grandfather, François Alexandre, was a plantation owner and he owned slaves. I'm curious to find out if there's anything in the archives that might help me to understand what he was like as a plantation owner.
Well, we found a few documents.
Okay.
Are you prepared?
Yes, I'm prepared. Mariage des...
François?
Ah, voilà. Okay, so marriage of François Alexandre Gros des Ormeaux and of Mademoiselle Marie-Joseph. Marie-Joseph. That's my great-great-great-grandmother. Wow. The year 1835, the 22nd of June, with 8 children. They had 8 children, but this was at the... Hang on. But is this not a marriage certificate?
Yes, indeed.
So they had 8 children before they got married?
Yes.
If they had legitimate children, was there something about their relationship that wasn't acceptable at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Was one or the other slightly not of the same class?
I think we're going to have a second document.
This is 1831.
4 years before.
4 years before, in July, le mois de juillet, at 11 in the morning, un acte d'affranchissement. Oh my gosh. Okay, hang on. Wah! So in Fort-de-France on the 25th of June in 1831, in the name of the king, we, the governors of Martinique, declare Marie-Joseph, aged 40 years, and her 6 children, liberated of all servitude
and free to enjoy, oh my gosh, and free to enjoy the remaining days of their lives in the manner that they choose. So my great-great-great-grandmother, Marie-Joseph, was a slave.
Yes.
And her son, my great-great-grandfather, Louis-Marie, was born in 1828 as a slave. That's mad. I have never felt like this in my entire life. I can't even put into words how I'm feeling right now. I need to know more about who these people were.
That was a pretty extraordinary revelation. At a time when sexual exploitation pretty much went hand in hand with slave ownership, apparently, my great-great-great-grandfather had what seems to be a very real romance with this slave. He married her, he legitimized all his children, and I'm trying not to romanticize the whole thing too much, but it sounds like François Alexandre had the capacity to be a better human being than I potentially thought he was at the beginning when I first found out that he was a slave owner.
François Alexandre and the freed slave, Marie-Joseph, Liz's great-great-great-grandparents, were married in 1835. Liz knows from their wedding certificate that his father was also called François Alexandre, and that his mother was called Pauline Zoe. Liz now wants to find out about them and their attitude to their son's extraordinary marriage to a slave. She's meeting local historian Vincent Huillet-Belrose.
Monsieur Huillet-Belrose, je suis très heureuse de vous rencontrer,
Bienvenue à la Martinique. Vous êtes ici.
Vincent has documents about the next generation in Liz's family.
Alors, on ne trouvera pas un document concernant directement François Alexandre, mais vous avez le document concernant son frère.
Son frère, le frère
Marc-Antoine, son frère cadet.
de François Alexandre, le deuxième. Le 26 février 1804, j'ai baptisé Marc-Antoine, âgé de 15 mois, naturel de la mulâtresse. Ah ben voilà, Pauline dite Zoé. Libre ainsi qu'il appert par l'acte de confirmation de ses titres de liberté. Mais c'est complètement fou, monsieur. Attendez, hein, parce que là... Alors, le père de François Alexandre, le deuxième, avait fait la même chose. Il avait eu des enfants avec une esclave. Il avait libéré cet esclave.
Après la naissance
de deux enfants, au moins.
De deux enfants.
Oui, c'était deux... So this 1804 document proves that François Alexandre Sr. had children with Pauline Zoe, who was a slave at the time when they had two children, François Alexandre Jr., my great-great-great-grandfather, and Marc-Antoine. So that means François Alexandre Jr. was mixed race. It's just extraordinary and overwhelming, and I am flabbergasted at this story.
Vincent collaborated with a distant relative of Liz's, who wrote a history of the Gros des Ormeaux family.
Sans mêler.
Eh oui, puisque vous allez voir, c'est une histoire de mélange.
Eh oui. Est-ce que François Alexandre Ier, lui aussi, était un fils d'une esclave et d'un monsieur blanc, d'un homme blanc?
Non. Lui est un blanc. Le père de François Alexandre était né à Marseille.
The book reveals that François Alexandre Sr., a white plantation owner whose father was born in France, publicly acknowledged Pauline Zoe as his partner. Although they were not formally married, this was extremely unusual in Martinique at that time.
François Alexandre, en assumant son union avec Zoé Pauline, en quelque sorte montait la garde fort de son ascendance, retranché dans l'isolement du Fond-Rivière, où il s'était taillé un fief à sa convenance. Il veillait à protéger sa descendance contre l'hostilité des lois et de l'animosité des hommes. Waouh. Et voilà. Waouh. Il était vraiment têtu, hein? Il voulait faire comme il voulait faire. I am superbly proud of François Alexandre Sr. And I absolutely adore this sentence that speaks of how he created his own little world, his own haven that suited him. And he succeeded in protecting his descendants against the hostility of the law and the animosity of man. And now, of course, I can't rest until I set eyes on where this place was, where he just lived the way he wanted to live with the people that he loved.
Liz is meeting up again with historian Dominique Roget to see if they can find the fiefdom François Alexandre Sr. created in the hills of Martinique. Dominique knows that the location of one of his plantations is now a small hamlet called Des Ormeaux.
Pardon, messieurs? Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Je cherche... cet endroit, ça s'appelle Des Ormeaux.
Des Ormeaux, c'est bien ici.
Ah, mais c'est bien ici, là.
Des Ormeaux, c'est le nom d'une famille.
Oui,
une famille qui est
C'est
très
le nom
connue
de ma
ici.
famille, hein?
Ah,
Oui. Je m'appelle...
Des Ormeaux.
ma grand-mère, c'était une gros des Ormeaux.
Ben, nous aussi, nous sommes des Gros des Ormeaux.
Vous êtes des gros des Ormeaux?
Nous ne portons pas le nom Gros des Ormeaux nécessairement, mais nous
D'accord.
avons des ascendants Gros des Ormeaux.
D'accord. Alors, est-ce que je peux vous demander, est-ce qu'il y a beaucoup de gros des Ormeaux ici?
Il n'y a que des Gros des Ormeaux. Même s'ils ne portent pas le nom Gros des Ormeaux, ils sont tous...
C'est la même
Parce
famille.
que l'ancêtre, c'était un coq du village.
Oh!
C'était la grande famille
C'était
d'ici.
une très grande famille.
En fait, vous êtes ici au cœur de l'habitation. La maison d'habitation, elle est à 200 mètres d'ici. Vous irez la voir probablement.
D'accord. Alors, vous pouvez venir avec moi, on va le rencontrer ensemble.
Avec plaisir.
Merci beaucoup,
Voilà.
messieurs. On y va?
On y va.
On y va.
Ah oui, merci.
Mon café, mon guide.
Mais est-ce que ça, c'est l'endroit où la maison, la première maison des Gros des Ormeaux, peut-être elle était là aussi?
Ah oui, je pense, oui. Je pense, je pense.
Wow. So this spot is where the known plantation house was, and it certainly dates to before the late 1800s, according to my cousins. So who knows, this could very well be the place where it all started, where François Alexandre set up the beginning of his stronghold, the beginning of his little world, and then expanded his property.
Dominique has two final documents to show Liz. They shed light on the relationship between Liz's great-great-great-great-grandparents, François Alexandre Sr. and the freed slave, Pauline Zoé.
The last will and testament of François Alexandre des Ormeaux Sr., 1831. Yeah? I recognize voluntarily and freely for my natural children all the rights that natural children are entitled to,
Well, they are.
and also legally recognized as such.
Exactly.
So I leave to the demoiselle Pauline Zoé all of my possessions and the buildings that I own.
This probably is a very important part of the story. It makes it quite fascinating, in fact, because it was done just after a law of 1831, which for the first time allows a white man to give money to his family or any free person of color.
So the changing of the law meant that now he could acknowledge his children, and now he could acknowledge the woman that he loved and leave her all of his possessions. And he was 95 years
Yes.
old. So it's a very lucky state of affairs that he lived to that age to be able to do this for his family. So he wrote the will in September 1831, and when did he pass away?
The year after.
1832, right. And what happened to Pauline Zoe after that?
That is the second document.
Dominique has a list of slave owners who received compensation from the French government when slavery was abolished in 1848.
This is the compensation to slave owners for slaves. Hang on a second. She received the compensation for the liberation of the slaves that her partner owned and that she, in effect, owned because she inherited the estates. That makes my head race. You know, here is this woman who was a slave to François Alexandre. They fell in love. They had children who, at the time, were slaves. My great-great-great-grandfather was a slave, you know, and then François Alexandre Sr. passes away and Pauline Zoe becomes a slave owner. I mean, that's just... How common would it have been at that time for a freed female slave to become the owner of a plantation or several plantations and many slaves?
It will be exceptional. Very rare.
Before going home, Liz is visiting her granny's grave.
I love this story. It makes me incredibly happy to have made this journey. Pauline Zoe must have been quite a tremendous woman to survive that roller coaster that must have been her life. To be a slave, to be freed, to bear children that were slaves, and then to become the owner of what she used to be. That must have been tough. I guess I won't really ever know what François Alexandre I's exact motivations were. But he loved who he wanted to love. And he lived the way he wanted to live. I don't think he seemed to care what anybody else thought. And I hope that some of that character has trickled down through the generations.
Press the red button now to watch the most magical music moments from BBC Radio 2's Festival in a Day, including Take That, Shania Twain and Blondie.